bolt of lightning explodes through a hardwired telephone line and into 25-year-old Dannion Brinkley. The blast throws him into the ceiling. He crashes back down so hard that he bends the bed that he lands on. His shoes smoke and the phone in his hand melts. 28 minutes. No heartbeat, no signs of life. He's covered with a sheet, prepared for the morgue. But Dannion wakes up. What he saw on the other side, he says, will change how you think about life, death, and what happens in between. Lightning strikes the ground about 40 million times each year just in the United States. On a rainy day in September of 1975, Dannion Brinkley was talking on his phone, which was a landline back then, during a thunderstorm. He wasn't even outside in the storm, and somehow he was struck. The odds of being hit like that are less than 1 in a million. The odds of dying from it, almost as rare. Nearly 90% of victims of lightning strikes survive. But make no mistake, being struck by lightning is a long road to recovery. Brinkley was paralyzed for days, partially paralyzed for 7 years, and not fully able to walk and feed himself for 2 full years. So what are the chances of being struck by lightning, dying, and surviving? Dannion Brinkley's case file defies the odds, because he didn't just survive, he came back with a story few would believe. But long before Brinkley, there was another man whose accounts are just as extraordinary and just as full of love and hope. 18th century Swedish theologian and scientist Emanuel Swedenborg had not just one, but many vivid experiences of the afterlife for almost 3 decades, more than 200 years before Brinkley. Both men were struck, so to speak, by what they discovered. Here's the picture of the afterlife that they lay out. While medical staff and his wife worked frantically to try to revive him, Dannion found himself floating above his body, watching. As they wheeled him into an ambulance, he saw a tunnel spiraling toward him, and he heard the sound of chimes. He said the sound was beautiful. It beckoned him, and Dannion entered the tunnel. And then something stepped into view. In front of him appeared a radiant, luminous figure, and Dannion immediately felt engulfed by a deep sense of love and safety and tranquility. Dannion recounts, "I had the feeling that no one could love me better. No one could have more empathy, sympathy, encouragement, and non-judgmental compassion for me than this being." According to Swedenborg, such encounters aren't merely comforting visions. They're the first stage in a spiritual intake process. Swedenborg wrote that angels stay with us as we wake up in the other world. They help us acclimate to this new spiritual reality in gradual stages. Dannion's guides knew he would be going back, so they wasted no time making sure he was fully awakened. The next stage was what Swedenborg described as opening your book of life. Today, most people would call it the life review, which is a complete disclosure of the self, which is impossible to fake or avoid. You relive every single moment of your life, but from everyone else's perspective, not just from yours. And so that means you will feel how everyone you interacted with in your life ever felt. For Swedenborg, the life review is the process by which what he calls your ruling love is revealed. Your ruling love is whatever you care about the most. And it comes down to whether you ultimately love others or whether you love only yourself. Dannion said that at this point in his life, he was a jerk. He was a bully, and he had made some pretty serious mistakes. Adultery, violence, cruelty. Reliving these moments, not just as himself, but as everyone else in the room, forced him to feel the full effect of the hurt and misery that he had caused. Now he saw clearly that he had lived in opposition to the fundamental law of heaven. Treat others as you want to be treated, with love.
The most important thing to take away from the near-death experience, other than that you don't die, is that you will see your whole life pass before you in a 360-degree panorama. You will watch it from a second-person point of view as though you were your own best friend. And then you'll literally become every person that you've ever encountered, and you will feel the direct results of your interaction between you and that person.
Swedenborg saw many individuals go through this same process. Over and over, he watched as newly arrived spirits in the afterlife were forced to admit the truth of what they had done and who they had been in life on this earth. He witnessed liars with their lies exposed to everyone, even murderers being confronted by their victims, and others experiencing the pain of their victims, and more. And he learned that in the afterlife, all is revealed. Nobody can pretend to be something that they're not really. Nothing is hidden that will not be uncovered, and nothing concealed that will not be known. So what you have said in darkness will be heard in the light, and what you have spoken in the ear will be proclaimed from the rooftops. Swedenborg wrote that our ruling love reflects the core of who we really are and the trajectory of our spiritual destinies. Our ruling love can put us in a state of heaven or a state of hell, depending on what we prioritize. Our nature is completely shaped by the dominant force in our lives. That force is what differentiates us from other people. If we are good, our heaven is created to accord with it. It is the underlying reality of our life. Loving ourselves alone at the expense of others, seeing people as obstacles or objects to use to our advantage, are defining features of selfish and callous indifference. These create a hellish existence, both here and in the afterlife. A life based on genuine love, the desire to help or connect and unite, is the basis of heaven, both here and in the hereafter. After the life review was over, the radiant being led Dannion to a place unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering structures shimmered like glass, catching and scattering light as if the entire city was carved from crystal. In Swedenborg's system of correspondences, such a city is never just a city. It is a living symbol, a spiritual map of goodness and truth. I have seen palaces in heaven that were so splendid as to be beyond description. Their upper stories shone as though they were made of pure gold, and their lower ones as though they were made of precious gems. Each palace seemed more splendid than the last. According to Swedenborg, the materials in the spiritual world matter. A city corresponds to or represents a system or doctrine of belief. Precious gems, stones, and crystals represent divine truth, and their transparency indicates the clarity of those truths. So the external environment mirrors the internal reality. In other words, Dannion wasn't just touring a city. He was standing inside spiritual architecture, built directly from the love, the goodness, and the truth of the beings that lived there. Then, the gathering. 12 luminous beings appeared before him.
I got into this crystal city and I was looking at the architecture of it, and then these beings, these 12 beings appeared. And I go through all the religious context of the 12 disciples, the 12 gates, the 12 pearls, the 12 tribes, all that. So 12 has got to be a significant position. But each of these beings showed me a box. And what would happen, Alex, is that being would radiate. And there was a 13th being to my right.
In biblical and Swedenborgian symbolism, 12 represents all things. All numbers in the word have symbolic meaning, and the number 12, which crops up so many times, makes this obvious. Wherever we find that number in the word, it means all. Dannion mentioned that a 13th being joined them and directed the other beings to share different visions with him. Swedenborg noted that the number 13 represents a holy remnant, or the innocence planted in childhood in us, that God uses to guide us later in life through trials. So could this scene have something to do with the fact that Dannion wasn't done yet, but he would have to face the challenge of returning to Earth to change the way that he lived? Dannion Brinkley is still alive today. Because of his electrocution in 1975, his heart has needed repairs throughout his life. But in spite of those challenges, he's still here, and he has made huge changes in his life.
And when you start focused on being a physical being, as opposed to a spiritual being, love thy neighbor as thyself, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, the basic core nature of acts of love, kindness. Because when you have a panoramic life of you, and everybody has one, you're going to see the little things, the little acts of kindness, the smile, the pat on the back. It's going to be okay. The dollar on the guy on the street, those things.
In Swedenborg's worldview, every act of kindness changes the spiritual atmosphere, building heaven one choice at a time. Our outward life consists of our works and deeds, and the quality of our inner life is manifested through them. Dannion has kept in touch with the spiritual world. Remarkably, he has experienced death 3 additional times during cardiac surgeries to repair his heart. And he was struck by lightning again. Talk about beating the odds. Dannion says he's had more spiritual experiences and continues to learn from them. The Brinkley file doesn't close neatly. Decades later, he's still here. He's an author, a lecturer, and a hospice volunteer. He founded the Twilight Brigade, training thousands to sit with veterans in their final hours. The Twilight Brigade now operates in VA hospitals and hospice care facilities across America.
I became more responsible as a spiritual being, looking out and, caring about people and setting up things that you do each day, paying attention to how you're breathing and what your intentions are, and setting goals to achieve things and markers to achieve those things. Because if I'm going to be every person that I ever encounter, and I'm going to be and feel the direct results between me and them, okay, then what do I want that to be? So this is why I became a hospice volunteer, because over here on this side, I can be, if I am that person, they're going to feel my love and support to help them go from this world to the next. And
if you strip his story to its core, one principle keeps surfacing. Every interaction leaves a mark. Swedenborg would call it the shape of our ruling love, the pattern of who we truly are, revealed moment by moment, choice by choice. We may gather from this what is meant by the life that stays with us after death. It is actually our love and our consequent faith, not only in theory, but in act as well. So it is our deeds or works, because these contain within themselves our whole love and faith. Whether you believe Dannion's account or not, the moral is impossible to dispute. We decide with every word and gesture what we leave in the lives of others. And if what Brinkley says is true, you'll be the one to feel it. Case closed? Not exactly, because in the end, the investigation isn't about what happened to Dannion Brinkley. It's about what happens next to you. Hey, thanks for watching the NDE files. Hope you enjoyed this episode. What we're trying to do in this show is make sense of the afterlife. We're trying to take the experiences of Emanuel Swedenborg, which are just incredibly extensive and structural, and match them up with experiences throughout history so that we can try to understand what's really going on with a life after death, so that we can get a good sense of what this reality we're in is, and hopefully have not just comfort, but action steps of how we can live rightly in that. So please like, please subscribe. That helps our channel get out there, and leave a comment. We're gonna respond to every comment that you put here because we wanna know what you think. Thanks for watching.